Hi y'all, and welcome back to my channel. And I will say now, if you hear a cat screaming in the background, that is because ever since getting spayed, Coco has had some separation anxiety from my husband. And he'd been home a lot from being sick, and so, you know, there was all that kind of whatever. And now that he has returned to the workforce, she's got that separation issue, so she's currently screaming in an attempt to bring him back home. It's pretty pitiful, I know, but that's what we're dealing with. She imprinted on him when we first got her. She is his cat, his baby, so we're just dealing with it. But today we are talking about I love how I'm just like running on into it. Like today we're doing a video that I thought was, I've probably done something similar to this, and I'm sure other people have done, you know, it's kind of like under that vein of like, you know, products no one talks about anymore. But I thought it'd be interesting to do products that have disappeared, you know, because when you're sitting around, I don't know why my brain works like this, but I'll be sitting around and just doing my thing, and then I'll be like, or I'll see something in a video and I'll be like, wow, no one talks about that anymore. No one, you know, that makeup item just kind of like just piffed off into the atmosphere of the oversaturation. And so as that product came in, I was like, well, let me sit down and let me think about products that, like, you know, either, you know, they don't necessarily have to be super hyped up products, but things that were released that are now just kind of non-existent. You know, I don't see people talking about them. I don't see them in collections, or if I do, it's in passing, you know, things that are just kind of, that were there, that have for some reason or another disappeared. Obviously, we preface this sort of thing with, if I talk about any of these products and one of these is one of your absolute end-all be-all favorite thing in the world, that's fantastic. You keep doing you, boo-boo. These are just my opinions and my thoughts on some makeup that, you know, was in the whatever and now it isn't. And the first thing that I saw someone talk about this, I think I was watching a highlighter declutter video, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember when those came out, and that is the Stila Heaven's Hue highlighters. Those like kind of, I don't want to say they were like the ColourPop Super Shock ones, but they were like this like glossy, emollient, not quite putty, not quite powder, weird hybrid situation. When they first came out, I ended up purchasing all three of the colors. I held on to like that pale purpley one for a while, and they weren't something that worked for me. Y'all know your girl is very limited when it comes to the cream liquid products that I like for my face, and that's basically limited to the Natasha Denona face palettes. But I was like, yeah, when these came out, you know, there were like, I feel like it wasn't a huge thing, but there are obviously some people that really, really liked them. And it's just, now it's a thing that I'm like, I don't, you know, you don't hear about it anymore, which I feel like is kind of a hallmark of the current market oversaturation we're at. Whereas, you know, a product gets released, and because there's so many highlighters, lipsticks, and foundations, and eyeshadow palettes being released, it doesn't really, makeup nowadays, the majority of it doesn't age well. And what I mean by that is, you know, back in the day, you'd release something and it would be like a standout hallmark in that brand for an extended period of time. And then we'd probably get, you know, a shade extension or something like that. Whereas now, there's so much being released by the one brand as well as other brands, things have more of a tendency of just getting lost. And because of that, we kind of forget about things existing. You know, it's kind of like the thing you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that was a thing, because while that thing was still a thing, something else was released to become a thing. And so there just isn't as much makeup consciousness. And I feel like this kind of highlighter just sort of suffered from that whole, you know, there's just so much being released. There is ColourPop, you know, they have their Super Shock shadows, which is like a bouncy, putty, cream, not powder, highlighter formula. And so if you've got an affordable option for kind of the same sort of like, you know, if you want to get that glossy, dewy, whatever, I felt like, in my personal opinion in dealing with that thing, is it just was too much effort to figure out how to use it, that it wasn't worth what I got on my face. So kind of a unique idea, but not something that I think ages well in the grand scheme of the highlighter realm. Then something that really just, this is actually a whole brand that really threw me back. Like, this was a brand that I had purchased some things when I like first started in this whole like makeup thing. And when I first started my channel, I think you probably would have seen me declutter some of these palettes in one of my past declutters. But do y'all remember that Calvin Klein had a makeup line at Ulta? I must admit, there was a bronzer from that line that I purchased because I'm a moron. Even though I don't bronze, I had to buy everything from every single brand. But I admit, for the longest time during my declutters, that thing went through so many declutters. Never used it, but boy did I love swatching it because it was all kinds of smooth. And I mean, this brand had a whole range of bronzers. I don't know if it had blushes. It had like eyeshadow duos. It had eyeshadow palettes. I had 2 of the eyeshadow palettes. They were absolutely awful. I mean, the epitome of faint, effervescent, fairy fart top coat or shadows. Like, I don't know what demographic they were trying to sell that to, but I mean, if that's the quality of the makeup they were whatevering, I now totally understand why they are no longer a thing. But I remember just sitting here thinking, you know, the aesthetic was pretty good. It was all clean. You know, it was very Calvin Klein. Ask if any of you are familiar with his designs. Not necessarily my personal aesthetic, although I do have a friend of mine. He is very drawn to Calvin Klein designs. But it's like there's just so much in that like oversaturation, and there's just so much of this whole like, well, if you're a celebrity at something, you know, be it a designer, be you a singer, be you Kim Kardashian, which I'm not exactly sure why she's rich, you know, but if you're a celebrity, somehow that warrants you being able to have your own makeup line. I mean, we've seen it from Marc Jacobs, you know, every fancy whatever has got perfume, you know, we got Gucci, we got Michael Kors, we got Yves Saint Laurent, you know, there is a plethora of like high-end something else that has then decided to put its little designer fingers into makeup, which to a certain degree I can understand and appreciate because, you know, when Marc Jacobs released his line, I was like, oh boy. I'm a huge fan of his fashion design, so when he decided he was going to do makeup, I was like, I'm going to have all of that. And I did. I had a large majority of it, and I have since decluttered all of it. But it's just kind of funny because you think about all these like, you know, passing brands and things that you're like, oh wow, that was a thing. That was, you know, and I'm sure it wasn't even that long ago. And you're just like, wow, it's amazing how quick something can like come up and be like, hey, what's up? We're here. And then it's like gone. Let me know if any of y'all remember that line, because it was kind of just a line that was just sort of there. You know, it was, you know, it's your basic celebrity something creating a makeup line that ended up not doing so well because, let's be honest, these are clothing designers doing makeup, and while artistic and whatever, you know, there's a difference. You know, just do what you do. You have enough money, you've got enough real estate, you just do what you do. And leave the makeup to more qualified people like Kylie Jenner and Kim Kardashian. I hope you all know that was sarcasm. That was not a serious statement. Then something that I feel disappeared for probably a good reason. I mean, even when these were like released, it was like, really? Was there really a need for that? And was this really completely thought through? It probably wasn't, because the majority of this brand's products aren't thought through, and the majority of products put on the market aren't thought through. But do y'all remember, this wasn't that long ago, but Too Faced was like, let's release a glitter pop eyeliner, which is a glittery eyeliner, which is kind of a headache in and of itself. But the best thing about this eyeliner is you're gonna put it on your face, and then when you want to take it off, you're gonna just be able to peel that bad boy right off your eyelid. And this raised a couple questions. I mean, putting glitter in anything that goes around your eye is a little bit of a concern. But it's like, okay, if you're banking, you are banking the selling point, the gimmick of your product is the fact that you can peel it off. If the formula is made so that it can be peeled away, doesn't that mean that it's going to be conducive to peeling when you don't want it to peel away? I mean, the eyelid area is one of the crinkliest, whateverest areas on your whole entire face. And so when you're putting down a straight line of something that, you know, it's like, like I said, the selling point is like, just take it and peel that shiz off. What's gonna happen throughout the day during the wear and the whatevers of this glitter pop eyeliner? You know, is it just gonna start peeling and popping off the lid? You know, eyeliner in makeup is something that needs to be so simple, so sacred, so straightforward. You know, we're looking for it to apply smoothly. We're looking for it to apply opaquely. We're looking to get a nice thin little whoosh. I don't feel like we're looking for a glitter infused peel off sticker that we're applying to our eyes. Do y'all feel me? You know, in the eyeliner game, if you want to be revolutionary, you know, and if you want to try to be revolutionary or you want something to be revolutionary, it better be good. It better be a good formula. It better be a good, you know, we've had the Mac pizza wheel, you know, when it gets to the benefit push-up, you know, liner, click, click, click. Like, no, just perfect a nice, simple, smooth tip. We don't need the glitter. We don't need the peeling off. We just need something to give us nice, beautiful wings for which to fly unto heaven. And this is something that is definitely a hyped up product. This is also from Too Faced. This is definitely something that was super hyped up that you're just kind of like, okay, all right, you know, things come, things go, some things stand the test of time, other things not so much. But y'all remember when Too Faced decided, first they released the Sweet Peach palette, which I lost my mind over. And then they were all like, well, let's release a whole collection, you know, let's do the Sweet Peach face palette. And I remember you could not get your hands on that dingity dang thing. It was one of the most like coveted, sought after face palettes of the year. It was one of those things people on Poshmark and Mercari be selling that shiz for $80. And I wanted it so freaking bad. And everybody wanted it and needed it. And it smelled like peaches and it was amazing. And now a lot of people are decluttering it. This item, while it being okay, I still have it in my collection, you know. It's a faint something highlighter, you know, the blush, faint, you know, bronzer, definitely not inclusive. It's one of those things where you're just like, it's okay, you know. At the time, it probably wasn't even that revolutionary either, but because it was peach and it was banking off that, you know, that made it seem so much superior than it actually was. And we just expect, I feel, a lot more for makeup now than we did then. Not that then was that long ago. But I just find it so funny that it was one of those things that's like, yes, this is amazing. This is one of the most end-all be-all amazing things that ever existed. Now it's like, no one talks about it. No one cares anymore. We are so over the peach. We're over Too Faced, honestly. But, you know, people used to be like, oh, it's amazing, it's beautiful, it's perfect, it's everything. And now it's just like, not so much, you know? Something else that's kind of, now, what I was thinking of when I was originally figuring out what I wanted to talk about with this video, which it's kind of gone a little bit different. It's just me ranting, which I know some of y'all come here for and love. But things that like show up that are like, oh my goodness, you know, we talk about them, they're super hyped, you know, and the release comes and we buy them and then it's kind of done. You know, and there is a certain element of that to a lot of makeup, especially eyeshadow palettes, because something comes up, people are hyped, people are psyched, people are ready, people are reviewing it. But, you know, then you'll still see it pop up. You know, there was hype about the Melt Cosmetics Gemini palette. You know, that still talked about it. Anastasia, Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance, Jeffree Star Bloodsugar. You know, there are things that had that initial crazy hype that are still talked about today. They haven't just kind of gone off into the whatevers. And something that was definitely very hyped up was the Jeffree Star Cosmetics Conspiracy palette. I mean, not gonna lie, I don't think that palette is his best work ever. I think the shade selection is a little haphazard. The formula isn't what I would consider his absolute end-all be-all formula. And when that happened, you know, the world, or at least the makeup world and a large portion of the YouTube world, completely lost their minds. I mean, this was the thing to have. Shut the internet down. I'm surprised I was able to get it. And it had this big, intense, explosive moment, and, you know, where that was the only thing everyone could talk about. And now you're just kind of like, okay, it's done. Jeffree's released another palette. You know, that one was kind of whatever. But, you know, it's kind of, like I said, it happened. And it made, you know, a somewhat intense mark on the whatever just for being what it was. But it had that intensity because of what it was, because it was a collaboration with Shane Dawson, because there was such a huge amount of his following and Jeffree's following. You know, when you take two people that have close to 30 million subscribers between the two of them, and you market a product that's got both of them in it, I mean, something's gonna happen. But it just happened, you know. That was it. It hasn't, you know, it happened. We had that explosive with whateverness. People have it, but it's not something that's like amazing. It's not something that's either changed the game or has impressed such a multitude of people with the shade selection and the quality that it's become, oh, this is a palette you need to have because it's so amazing and versatile. It's a palette you need to have because it's the Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson collaboration. And I feel like that's where we've gotten with a lot of our makeup, with all of this hype and craziness. You know, things aren't as staple as they used to be. You know, something is released and it's not like, well, this is, you know, the end all be all everything palette now. That's not the point, you know. It's all the hype and it's the craze. And it's like, oh, well, you need it because it's Shane Dawson and Jeffree and because it's going to be super limited edition and it's like, why can't we bank something off of, you know, just the makeup being good? And I may be very biased and that may be a very unpopular opinion, but I feel like, you know, that palette, that whole collection, I mean, I like the little mini one better than the big one, but I feel like the whole entire hype around it was just because of Shane and Jeffree, you know, and that's great. That's a marketing thing, you know, y'all get your coin, do what you gotta do. But at the same time, I wish we could just kind of reel it in and pull it back, and, you know, all that hype and all that craziness is sort of what creates this like mass hysteria and all of the unhealthy things that happen within the community. And it's like, you know, there's this moment and there's this intensity and there's this craziness and this drama and people can't have it and people are upselling it. And then a couple of months later, it's kind of like, well, that was a bit of an overreaction. I'm just saying, we don't have to be losing our minds. That's something that I've been learning about and just kind of like doing my thing. Is like, I don't have to lose my shiz over a makeup palette. I have learned that it's not that deep, it's not that important, and if I take the time to step back and not initially like hype all that shiz up, you know, after a while, the feeling will pass. Then if we're gonna talk about Jeffree Star, we might as well talk about Jeffree Star. Y'all know that your girl has learned that she is not a fan of Morphe. I'm not a fan of, you know, their makeup. I'm not a fan of their whatevers. I'm not a fan of necessarily most of the people they collaborate with. But then they did the Morphe and Jeffree Star, I believe round 2. They released a palette and I was like, you know what? I bought it. And I reviewed it, and I came to the conclusion of when you are when the person you're collaborating is someone who has their own makeup line, who makes makeup and formulas that are superior to your own, why are you collaborating with Morphe? Just take that artistic energy and put it into your own shiz. Is that just me? Is that just a me thing or what? The palette quality was okay. You know, I feel like it's Morphe quality. If you try to make it work, I guess it'll get the job done. But when you're someone, like I said, like Jeffree, or when Manny collaborated with them, I said the same thing about them. When you have a brand that is in basically every single way superior to the one that you're collaborating with, just why? Just take that creativity and all of thatness and put it into a product of your own that has better formulas that for the most part, I don't know about Jeffree, but you know, Manny's brand is very unproblematic. Like, why do you gotta be collaborative? And I don't know nothing about contracts, and I know we're all about getting money, and I know that Jeffree and Morphe and Manny have all been like a whatever, so I can understand that. But at the bottom line of it, it is for me, I'm just like, why? Why put your energy, literally, why put your energy into products that you probably know, or maybe you don't, maybe I don't know, that you potentially know are less, that are subpar to your own? Like, where is the logic in that? Because I tell you right now, if Jeffree had taken that palette and made it in his own, I would have bought it. But you basically had those colors if you had blood sugar, you know? And then they did that, and it was like the 35-0 with a pop of green and pink and a really crappy glitter. Then next up is, I mean, I'm personally biased against this. It doesn't work for me. If it works for you, that's fantastic and amazing. But when it was released, like this was like, oh my goodness, when it was teased, and then it was released and the world just like, ah! But the first incarnation of the Juvia's Place I Am Magic foundation, that wonderfully, beautifully, hideously matte foundation. It's one of those things that people completely lost their mind over. It sold out, and I can't tell you how quickly, and I was waiting to get it on Juvia's Place, and I was trying to get it on Ulta, and I never even really found my shade, which is kind of okay because I have since decluttered the foundation because it is the mattest, the driest, the cakiest foundation I have ever tried in my life. We're talking worse than the Tarte Shape Tape Hydrating Foundation. And now I feel like, once again, whenever so much of this makeup is suffering from just the whole, you know, initial hype and craze and whatever of it, you know, and then after that dies down, it's like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't nearly as phenomenal. Maybe it wasn't as revolutionary or as amazing or whatever as people wanted us to believe in that initial hype. When you're able to take that step back and when you're able to actually analyze and think about the product and separate it from that initial craziness and that like FOMO and that need to purchase, you know, you're able to look at it a lot more rationally. Now, I'm not saying the foundation wasn't was a bomb for everybody, but what I'm saying is it's really important to actually think about it. You know, I have been guilty, I can't tell you how many times, of just trigger buying something, you know, someone's like, it's amazing, or even if it's, you know, we don't even have any reviews, it's released, and I'm like, oh boy. You know, when in reality, the smart thing to do is step back, wait for some reviews, and then buy it. Now, obviously, as someone who does reviews on my channel, sometimes we just buy it because we want to be the one doing the reviews for y'all. But I have been definitely trying to teach myself so much more to just step back, and don't jump on it just because everyone else is, you know, it's like that whole thing with your mom, you know, well, if your friends jumped off a cliff, would you do it? I mean, it's basically like that, but with makeup, you know, if your friends bought it, would you buy it? You know, essentially, yes. There is a very large amount of sheep/herd mentality when it comes to makeup purchasing. All right, I am not entirely sure how this video went or what went really happening. You know, I was just like, makeup that disappeared, and I feel like this video went in a little different, more ranty, more in-depth, whatever of something. Not entirely sure what I was initially trying to do, but this came out. If you've made it so far, that's fantastic. Leave a gold star, because that's what you get for sitting through a 29-minute video of me just blowing my pie hole. But obviously, I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on these products down below, as well as, you know, something that you think has just, you know, kind of disappeared, that had this huge, ginormous spotlight on it, and for some reason or another, it just ain't it anymore. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!